Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Canada's Centre for Geography and Exploration. I'm Abby Hayward, and I'm the Senior Editor at Canadian Geographic. I'm so thrilled that you decided to join us for this very special Can Geo talk with wildlife photographers Ryan Tidman and Maxime Légaré-Vézina. I'd like to first acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin peoples who have been guardians of and in relationship with these lands for thousands of years. I'd like to further acknowledge that our work reaches across all of the distinct First Nations, Métis homelands, and Inuit Nunavut, and for this we are grateful. I'd like to thank those who made a donation to the Society this evening. Canadian Geographic is now in its 96th year, rapidly approaching a century of telling stories about the people, places, and wildlife that make this country so special. It's thanks to donors like you and our subscribers that we are still able to publish a beautiful magazine and put on free public events like this one. We appreciate you more than we can say. We are also deeply grateful for the ongoing support of the Ordain Foundation. Thanks to their generosity, both of tonight's speakers are engaged in visual storytelling projects with a focus on conserving the extraordinary biodiversity of British Columbia. Ryan as the Ordain Wildlife Conservation Fellow and Maxime as the Emerging Photographer in Residence. Watch for those projects in future issues of Canadian Geographic. Now, please make sure your phones are set to silent so that everyone can enjoy the presentation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my speakers. Ryan Tidman is a wildlife photographer, cinematographer, and storyteller based on Vancouver Island, BC. As a frequent contributor to Canadian Geographic, he has captured compelling images and stories highlighting the region's unique ecosystems, from temperate rainforests to coastal waters. His work spans the globe, including Arctic and Antarctic expeditions for natural history series, bringing remote and fragile habitats to audiences worldwide. Ryan's photography and cinematography focus on conservation and the intricate lives of wildlife, with recent projects documenting spirit bears, dolphins, wolves, and Canada's rarest animal, the Vancouver Island marmot. His approach combines scientific insight with visual storytelling, connecting people to nature and inspiring stewardship of wild places. Maxime is a professional wildlife photographer based in Quebec. For over 10 years, he has spent most of his time in the field searching for meaningful encounters, striking scenes, and new species to discover. Years of observing wildlife have allowed him to develop a strong understanding of animal behavior and a respectful, ethical approach to photography. For Maxime, knowing the land and the species he photographs is essential. Combined with patience and perseverance, this approach allows him to create the images he envisions. His constant pursuit of powerful images and his passion for adventure have taken him across the globe. Today, he leads and organizes photography trips, guiding photographers to some of the world's most iconic destinations for nature and wildlife photography. Tonight's talk is moderated by Canadian Geographic Editor-in-Chief, Alexandra Pope, and please join me in welcoming our speakers.
Thanks, Abby, and thank you so much, Ryan and Max, for being here. I know you both have had a really busy travel schedule lately. Ryan, you flew in from Vancouver Island yesterday.
Yep.
And you came back from Belize when?
Like 2 days ago. Yeah.
So we're just really happy that you could make this work and join us in Ottawa this evening. So how did you get started in photography? Want to start? Max?
Yeah, I can start. I started about 12 years ago. I think the first passion came when I was a kid, passion for nature and for wild animals. And I was lucky to grow up just next to a river, so I could just spend a lot of times there watching animal. And so after, when I was a teen, I had other interests, but in my early 20s, I came back to my roots, and I was about to leave for a long trip to Australia and Asia. And I just wanted to bring back some good memories. So this is where I bought my first camera. And I just read some blogs online. I really learned pretty much everything by myself. And it was when I first go out in nature and I encountered the first animals that the real passion began, like the passion for photography. I had the one for nature, since I was born, I guess. And then I went for this trip for like almost a year trip to Australia. And this country is is very crazy. It's everything you picture in your head when you think of Australia, like koalas, kangaroos, cockatoos. So it was just unbelievable. So I was very passionate about that. And when I got back to Quebec, I just bought another camera. And then I think this is where everything started. So I didn't know by then, but I feel like when I bought this first camera, my life was about to change. You know, in life, sometimes there are crossroads, and just buying this just led me to where I am now. So.
Great. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up reading National Geographic, Canadian Geographic, watching Planet Earth, all those sort of things, and I knew that was always something that was like, whoa, that's really cool, but it didn't feel like a real life career. I went to the University of Guelph and I pursued environmental sciences. I graduated and I was trying to figure out like, what was I going to do next? And full disclosure, I was not the best student. You know, very average marks, but like very keen to be outdoors. So I was trying to figure out how to maintain that, you know, outside world without having to necessarily pursue academia. And I'd stumbled across this program that was offered at the Royal Ontario Museum called Environmental Visual Communications. And essentially that integrated my background of science into like a multimedia storytelling. And it landed me an internship with 2 National Geographic photographers on Vancouver Island. So the first time I'd really like touched a camera was probably 2017 when I started working with these 2. So I was kind of diving into the deep end, and it was like instantly like, that's what I want to do. So I worked with them for a few years and went freelance in 2020 and haven't really looked back at all.
Wow, amazing. Who are those photographers?
Paul Nicklin and Christina Mittermeier. Yeah, Sea Legacy.
Names that will be very familiar to folks who read Canadian Geographic. We like to say we gave Paul his start before he got too big for Canadian Geographic and went to Nat Geo and stuff. So you kind of hinted at this already, but how and why did you make the leap to doing photography full time? And you can start since you've sort of alluded to that already.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I'd been working with Paul and Christina for a few years, and like this was for sure what I wanted to do. But at some point I had to kind of prove to them, but more importantly to myself, like I can do this for myself and by myself. And when I was working with them, if I was not on a shoot or on an expedition, I would be like borrowing gear on the weekend and trying to figure out stories to cover on Vancouver Island, which ended up as the Vancouver Island marmot story that we'll talk a little more about later. And it was like the first real conservation story I'd done. So I wanted to do more of that and like prove that I could do more of that. So I went freelance in 2020, and I quickly realized like, wow, this is a hard career to do like as freelance. But then I had gotten into video as well. So working for natural history, cinematography for production companies in the UK primarily. So like BBC, Netflix, Disney, Nat Geo. But all of the camera operators are based in the UK because that's where the industry is. And if you all remember, 2020 was the first year of COVID and they closed the borders. And in all of those series, there are so many Canadian sequences. And I was just taking like every opportunity I could get to go like, one, make a name for myself and start learning the video side of the industry, but to continue working on the photo side as well. So I was fortunate in timing, which is, you know, unlikely to say during COVID, but it really gave me an opportunity to kind of kickstart the career.
Yeah, that was probably the best case scenario for the pandemic. And Maxime, I understand that you spent most of your early career working as a banker. Is that right?
Yeah, I was actually working in insurance for a bank. I've done that for 12 years, for like 20 years old until 32. So yeah, for a long time. I honestly didn't really like the job. It's just, you know, I was working from noon until 8 p.m. every day. So I was able to go out in the field every morning with my camera. I was also working 4 days per week. I had also the possibility to, you know, do overtime. So I remember a year I had like 12 weeks off, so I could go for long trips. So I feel like photography and this job were mixing well until it were not anymore, you know. So at some point, you know, I just had some opportunities that I needed to turn down because I had a job. And yeah, it's a long story, but let's make it short. So at some point, they wanted me to be back 5 days a week at the office. I was like, I can do this, you know, it's not possible, you know. I had actually 2 full-time jobs. So I was like, this is not happening. So, and this is where I decided to do, you know, the big step. And it's quite, you know, something to leave your job and your security to like pursue your passion full-time. I was like, is this sustainable? Can I live from this? So definitely a good move. And probably like the best move of my life so far, I would say.
Seems like it's working out pretty well.
Yeah, it is. I can say that, yeah.
Who do you you admire in the photography world? Do you have any mentors?
I don't have any mentors. I have obviously there's a lot of people like Ryan, for example. There's a lot of people out there, and with the Candio, magazine and issue, we can see a lot of people work. Also, on social media, we have access to a lot of, people's work. And so I don't have very specific people, but I would say the general wildlife photographer community around the world. We see some crazy stuff like every single day. We're talking, me and Ryan earlier, just showing him like, oh my, did you see this? It's just incredible. And just watching what other people do. And I'm just trying, to improve my own work. So yeah, just I would say people in general.
Great. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, definitely echoing what Maxime is saying is like it is a big collaborative industry. But like if I had to choose individuals, it stems from, having my own issues of Cangeo, Nat Geo, whatever it is, and like cutting out my favorite images and like putting on my wall with a sticky note under like, this is my favorite image because this, or like this resonates me with this. And, it ends up kind of being like repeat photographers. So you definitely find like inspiration in that. Obvious ones, Sebastião Salgado for black and white fine art, amazing. Charlie Hamilton James, Renan Ozturk for being able to kind of live in that world where it's high-end video and photo simultaneously, which is incredibly challenging, and few are doing that successfully, especially like them. Steve Winter, who kind of really like revolutionized, I'd say, camera trapping with big cats. He has that iconic photo of the cougar in front of the Hollywood sign, if anyone knows what that is.
Really? Oh.
Yeah,
I need to look at that.
yeah. So there are like, a bunch of people who really do fantastic work. Amy Vitale, conservation work. So that list goes on, and it's just like trying to find the people who's putting out work that, I really resonate with personally. So I just assume everyone else is going to resonate personally with that as well. And then, trying to find those right people.
Awesome. Just going back to the idea of the wildlife photography community, something we've noticed at Canadian Geographic is that people from Quebec clean up in our competitions every year. Some of the best photographers that we work with in our community are from Quebec. Why do you think that is?
Honestly, that's a good. I asked a question myself. I was like, I think we won this title like 3 times in 5 years. I don't know why. Why is that? What do you think? So maybe I don't know if people from BC, because they are like great photographers in this country. Yeah. No. Honestly, I don't know, but I asked a question myself. Yeah, we need to figure this out.
Alex. Okay, we got to do some
Yeah, we do.
Okay, tell me about the process of getting the shot. So how much time do you spend planning versus actually in the field trying to execute your vision? And to what extent does a great capture come down to luck and how much to planning?
I would say there's definitely a lot of planning. Even before stepping outside to go in the field and starting to shoot, you need to do some research. You said it earlier. I really think we need to learn about the animal we're photographing. I travel a lot, and before going somewhere, I would do spend hours and hours of research. For example, this Australia trip that I did this fall took me about 150 hours of research before even getting there. Also, I tried to learn about the bird's name. I need to learn a lot of things before. And after then, you are in the field. So if you know well enough the animals, you can anticipate their behaviors, are more likely to get a good shot. And after that, you just need to put a lot of time. It depends I'm sure Ryan can relate on this, according to what he's been working on lately. So, sometimes you can be very lucky. You go out and in an hour, you get a great shot. You're like, oh my God, this is good. It happens a couple of times per year, but there are some other moments where you're trying to focus on something and it can take hours, days, weeks, months, and maybe a year to achieve something. But I really think there's a lot of preparation before even going out.
A quote that I live by is, luck is at the convergence of preparation and opportunity. And that really is the epitome of wildlife photography. When we were sitting downstairs, I have a little note of, if I can get it out of my pocket, in terms of preparation. Oh. So for the wolf project that we'll talk about, I did the math. I've spent 18 days in the field, several thousand kilometers by boat and car. I've taken 12 ferries, and I've had a 10-minute encounter with one wolf.
Oh, wow.
So, it's it's a pain in the ass, but, it pays off. And I think that's kind of really what draws me to the whole event is, I'm way more interested in the pursuit rather than the photography. Just having the opportunity to, like Maxime is saying, is like to study the subject, to have a better understanding of like animal behavior, and maybe that goes into like the background of biology, but it makes everything so much more rewarding when things start to pay off.
So something that we've been thinking a lot about at Canadian Geographic, especially in the last few years, is the ethics of wildlife photography. You know, how do you get an amazing shot with minimal disturbance to the animal, without stressing the animal, without disturbing the habitat? And we're very cognizant that, you know, unfortunately, a lot of amateur photographers will take some crazy risks to get the shot, or they'll even resort to using bait to bring an animal into their field of view. So I'd love to get both of your thoughts on how do you conduct wildlife photography in an ethical way, in a way that is really respectful of these living beings?
You know, I got a lot of photography tours, and so as you said, I feel like people sometimes get carried away. You know, we're excited, we're all super passionate about what we do, and once you have the animal in front of me, some people are just losing it. I feel they're not, yeah, this is really what's happening sometimes. So they don't want to disturb the animal. I mean, it's not on purpose, but it's just thinking about the shot before the animal, but we always need to put the animal first. So you need to take a step back and just like, and you know when you're disturbing it, right? An animal that is not disturbed is going to hunt, is going to preen, is going to sleep, is going to do his thing. And this is only when you're not disturbing them that you're able to get a good shot. Because sometimes, you know, I look at some photos and I will see a fox and he's just like, ugh, he feels so bad, like poor animal, what happened to him? So yeah, you really need to keep that in mind. And again, knowing about the animal behavior, so you will know when you're disturbing them. And I feel like, you know, the more time you spend into this, then you're likely to get some good shots without having to disturb them. And yeah, just always keeping in mind, you know, sometimes I also think, like, if people were watching me, would I be proud of myself? You know, if the answer is no, I would just like, okay, then I'm stopping this, because you don't want to feel, you know, any guilt or anything, because we love this nature, we want to showcase it, but you're not there to disturb it, right?
Yeah, I mean, as a photojournalist, like the obvious thing is like I can't manipulate a scene. So, you know, whether that's landscaping a shot and cutting branches to make something better, or baiting an animal one way, like through sound or through food, it's just like not acceptable as journalistic integrity, but also for the animal's sake. And there are so many new ways you can kind of mitigate your disturbance working with animals. Something I've spent a lot of time on over the past 3 or 4 years has been camera trapping. So with new technology, we have new opportunities to kind of capture animals more authentically. So the big thing, like from DSLR to mirrorless, is now we have silent shutters. So, you know, you negate all sound from images. And now I'm using camera traps. So it's like a Pelican case with a customized computer inside that connects to my camera. And I can set up through an app to dictate, like, I want the camera to be active from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. in daylight. And if it's connected to a beam brake system, but an animal passes through and the beams are separated, or if a PIR sensor, like something we even use like for garage door openers, right? If there's a subject moving in the way, then it can wake the camera. The camera knows X amount of time to trigger. And using tools like that, a project I just finished, actually one of the photos we'll look at, is the impacts of old growth logging on black bears on Vancouver Island. And the agreement I had with the biologist was, like, the whole story is that bears are exclusively reliant to den in hollowed out old growth cavities on Vancouver Island, as it's a temperate rainforest. So much amount of rain means they can't den in traditional cave or rock formations, so they're reliant to den in these hollowed out old growth structures. But a den site is so sensitive for these animals, any anthropogenic disturbance would be enough to push them off a site. So our agreement was, like, I could go set camera traps, you know, months before they started denning, and then have the camera essentially wake up a month or two into the theoretical hibernation time, and then start triggering if the bear came out to urinate, or if the bear came out to, like, look at, like, it snowed or something. And we were able to get some, like, really, really impressive shots that highlight the sensitive area as non-invasively as possible. So new tech goes a long way for helping, I guess, ethical photography.
That's amazing. What about drone photography? I know there's some mixed feelings in the community about how invasive drones can be.
Yeah, I mean, like all species, it's really subject dependent. You know, if the subject you're trying to photograph is an aerial predator, then of course a drone is going to be off-putting. You know, like if it's a massive animal that doesn't have any impact from aerial predators, maybe it's a different story. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's kind of a case-by-case basis. And you inherently take that risk as a drone operator or a photographer, and you're kind of using your best discretion to dictate the length of the encounter and how you perceive the animal to be behaving. So again, it comes down to like educating yourself about the species you're working with, but also at what point is it not beneficial for the animal to be photographed.
Right. Well, I think it's time to get into some visuals here in our presentation. So I'm going to ask, what is the craziest thing that's ever happened to you in the field? And I think we have a video for Maxime's story.
Yeah, short videos. You'll see it's just a few seconds long. So it was last year in Norway. So I went there to photograph musk oxen. You need to snowshoe your way to the top of the mountain to get a good view and to hopefully locate them. So it took 3 hours to get to the top, and it was very windy, as you can tell by on the video. Very, very windy. But after like a couple hours, you're just like, we're there, so yeah, we're not going back. And then I found the musk oxen. So they were just on the other side of the mountain. We photographed them for probably like 15 minutes. And at some point, I was just like, the camera were just like getting carried in the wind. I was like, no, we need to go back. So then we hiked back to the top. But once we reached the top, it was like unbelievable. This was long afterwards because we couldn't even hold the cell phone when we're at the top. I think the wind was like over 100 kilometers an hour. And so we were literally pushed to the ground. So we basically needed to crawl all the way like down until we reached a forest patch. So the wind were, the trees were blocking the wind. So yeah, we made it. We had even like a couple of shots from this, but I'm like, for a 15-minute shoot, I'm not sure if it was worth it. But yeah, it's a fun story. A year after, I'm just like, now I'm looking back and that was fun. So
it's all part of the adventure.
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, now we've got some images that you need to explain, Brian.
Yeah. Nice. These are good ones. Next slide. No, I'm joking. This was on a shoot last January. I was in the Philippines working for National Geographic filming giant honeybees. And yeah, I mean, you can kind of tell what's about. You can tell the left side of the image at least. But yeah, final days of the shoot. And we had been to like 14, 15 wild colonies, and we're all pretty comfortable at this point. And for whatever reason, this last colony we approached was really moody. Maybe there's been a big predator who had come through and tried to take honey earlier compared to our arrival. But yeah, as soon as we arrived, started setting up camera gear, the buzzing was pretty loud. Then all of a sudden, the first bee stings, and if like when a bee stings and the stinger gets stuck inside you, it releases a pheromone, an alarm pheromone, which then indicates to all the other bees like, hey, we need to go attack. So everyone started kind of manically running, and this is in the middle of like this massive mangrove, so tripping hazards every single direction you can imagine. So I decided it would be best to like lay down and try to hide away from the bees. And that, as soon as I realized that wasn't working, I kind of mad dashed for it. And I think I had 18 stings in something like 2.5 minutes. And then to make matters worse, the next day was the last day in the Philippines, and for whatever reason, we went to McDonald's and they had mixed spaghetti. So I have to try mixed spaghetti, and then I got food poisoning. So flying back to the Philippines where I couldn't open my eyes, and I was like sweating and crying, and everything as bad as you can imagine was happening to me.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it's just, I guess, the life of a wildlife photographer.
I'm just trying to imagine the reaction of your seatmate on
Disaster.
All right, we're going to now talk about some of your favorite images which you've supplied. So this is one of Maxime's images. So where was this one taken?
It was taken on Anticosti Island. It's in Quebec in the St. Lawrence. I don't know if you know the one. It's quite a big island, but it's very remote, so it's hard to get there. And a friend of mine went a couple of years ago. He said there are foxes everywhere. There's silver fox, cross fox like this one, red foxes. I was like, oh my God, I want to go. And I got there, and for days I couldn't find a single fox. And obviously it's always happening this way, isn't it? And then I would see people from the small community living there, and they were like, oh, you're still here, so you got some great shots. I was like, no, I didn't see a fox. And people were like, they're everywhere. I was like, no, they're not. So after a while, someone told me that trappers went to the area just a couple of days before I got there, which is pretty sad because, fox fur is not worth anything now. So they're just doing this for fun, which is it's very, very sad. At least this one survived. So I kept, tracking them. I had very low hope at this point. I was like, this is just not going to work. And I had about 2 weeks there. A couple of days left to this trip, and I was tracking this one for days, finding, tracks in the snow and hopefully, find the animal who's putting these tracks. And at some point I finally saw it, and it was the most beautiful fox you can see, like beautiful cross fox. There was a St. Lawrence behind it, beautiful dramatic stormy sky behind. So it's one of my favorite shots ever. So just wanted to show this one.
I just think it's amazing that you went to Anticosti in the winter. I didn't even think that was possible.
It's not something very common. Honestly, people just don't go there. They go for summer sometimes, but it's kind of hard to get there. But it was worth it. At least, I got my shots. And
Did you see any deer?
I did. There was deers, at least, there was a lot of friendly deer, so at least it was helping me to, to keep up, because, sometimes when you go somewhere, you have a specific goal in mind, and when it's not happening, it's like, kind of a bummer. But, in that case, there was deer to keep me company.
We just did a story on Anticosti Island, and my favorite fact from it is that deer outnumber people on the island by 500 to 1.
Oh my God, I didn't know that. That's so funny.
Fun fact.
Oh yeah, very fun one.
Okay, let's go to the next image, which is, this is a phenomenon that actually was taking place in BC last week, right, Ryan?
Yeah, it's an annual event. It's the Pacific herring spawn. And what we're looking at here is actually herring sperm, herring milt. So every year in the springtime, all the males and the female herring will swim to shore and herring, small schooling fish. And when they spawn in such mass that the milt from the male eggs actually kind of transforms the water into something that, kind of looks like an aurora borealis. So for so many species, both underwater and above, terrestrial and marine species, the Pacific herring really kind of symbolized this first real protein hit of the new year. After this cold and wet Pacific Northwest winter, it really brings transforms the water to something like the Serengeti, in terms of you have whales, wolves, bears, seals, sea lions, eagles, everything comes and forages on herring, whether it's the fish or the roe that's left behind.
It's amazing to see photos of this from the air, with a drone or aerial photos, because it almost looks like the Caribbean. The water is so blue, and it's sperm.
Yeah. You try not to think about it when you're swimming in it. No, it's special. I mean, again, going back to that tech, right? Drones really unlock. This was helicopter, but drones really unlock the opportunity to see stuff like this, because I mean, up until, let's say 2014, maybe, before really drones were popularized, you don't really get to experience something like this, and it really unlocks a new perspective.
Now, did you tell me that you have dived in these waters?
Yeah, lots. Yeah, you just don't think about it. I mean, the viz is terrible, so every turn you make, you're like, ooh, I wonder what I'm going to see, and it's usually just murky water. But when you spit your reg out or something gets in your mouth, you're like, oh, shoot. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next one, which is another one of it's so beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's one of my favorite too. Obviously, they're all my favorites. This was a couple years ago. I do a lot of kayaking during summer, from May until November, when the lake freezes. I'm always out there kayaking super early in the morning. For that shot, I had to wake up at 1:30 in the morning, because it's a lake where moose go to feed on aquatic plant. It's at the end of June, so the end of June is probably the worst. The sunrise at 4:30 in Quebec City. So yeah, it's very, very early. So I had two hours drive to get there. So woke up at 1:30, go to the car, do the 2 hours, and then I get to the lake about an hour before sunrise. So it's still very dark, but you can hear the sound of nature awakening. And then I just paddle around until I find this beautiful moose. And it was the most beautiful misty atmosphere. This is my favorite, atmosphere of all. When you get foggy, misty morning, it's just the best for me. So pure description of the best morning ever.
Is morning your favorite time to shoot generally?
Oh yeah. I'm very a morning person. For me, going out in the evening, I know we still have some good light in the evening, but there usually no fog in the evening, so you don't get this atmosphere. Usually also early in the morning during summer, people are sleeping like normal people. Me and Ryan are not, but normal people are sleeping, so then you're usually out there all alone. So yeah, morning is the best for me.
Sounds very peaceful.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, you will need to come.
And to the bugs.
I do need to come.
Yeah.
All right, next one. So we've got to explain what's happening
It's
here.
my
I mean,
favorite.
anyone who's been reading Canadian Geographic since at least 2023 will probably know what this photo is showing, but Ryan tells it best.
Yeah, so what we're looking at is Canada's most endangered mammal undergoing surgery in the subalpine of Vancouver Island. And this is a Vancouver Island marmot. So a bit of background, in the early 2000s, the population was as low as 50 individuals in the wild. And, now it's around 400, which sounds really fantastic. And it is to an extent, like it is a conservation success story. It's a critically endangered species and it's recovering from the brink of extinction. But with all that said, it's still very close. 400 or 500 individuals is nothing, right? And something that they're doing to mitigate stress on these animals is surgeries in the field. So rather than bringing these animals back, trapping them in their natural habitat in the subalpine of Vancouver Island and bringing them to captivity to perform surgeries, they actually helicopter all of the equipment up into the mountains to perform the surgeries there. And they're doing this, again, they can trap a marmot, perform surgery, insert radio telemetry so that they can track the marmot in the future with telemetry, all in 45 minutes, which is seriously incredible compared to, like week-long endeavors of bringing marmots out of the mountains and then surgery and then back into the mountains. So this image, it took a few years to get. It's, a lot of trust developing with these researchers and Malcolm, the surgeon here, to get the permission to go photograph something so sensitive. So it was, it's a special moment, and it's the symbol of, I guess, conservation success.
What are the marmots like when they wake up from surgery?
Yeah, it's been one of the few times I've been able to handle a marmot and just look like super lethargic. They're like Play-Doh, and their arms will slowly flop out and their eyes will kind of open and close, and it's really amazing, but they come to pretty quick. So by the time you've hiked them back up into the burrows where they've been trapped, they're whistling and ready to get out of there. Yeah.
Oh, right,
Yeah, it's a good question. So what they're doing is making a hole into their abdomen and inserting a radio transmitter. So it essentially just pings a certain frequency on a telemetry unit. So one of those big like antennas that you can hike into the field. And the pinging symbolizes a few things for the recovery efforts. So the first one is its heartbeat, essentially. So you can tell if a marmot is, one, alive or dead, two, in hibernation or not, due to the speed of the heartbeat if it's beating. And the louder the sound gets, the closer you are to the marmot. And like, even though these people know where marmots are, there are still so few, and it is like such rugged and treacherous terrain that it's really hard to actually find them. So using any chance they can get to help monitor the marmots, whether, like putting in telemetry so they can identify where they are and if they're alive and if they've moved, is integral to the recovery efforts.
And by the way, if you missed the feature that we did, because we did publish a lot more of Ryan's images of the marmots and this research in the late June 2023 issue of the magazine, you can pick a copy up downstairs after the talk. My mic is cutting out. I might have to switch you guys, but it's okay. I'll just keep going for now. But don't miss it. It's a great story, and there's a lot more super adorable photos of marmots in the magazine. So now we'll go to the raccoons in the tree. I just love this image.
Yeah.
It's so cute.
Yeah, this is why I chose this one. Everyone is looking at it and they're just like, oh, wow, this is very cute. What's fun about this one is I took this one 5 minutes away from home. So I think it's a great, it's super cool. You didn't have to go too far for this. So it's a great reminder that you don't need to go far to witness some beautiful wildlife moments, right? So there was actually 6 baby raccoon tucked inside this super small tree cavity. And the mom was just obviously trying to rest there. And, the little ones, kept climbing over her and just popping their heads out. So it was just very, very funny to watch. I spent quite a while with this family. It was very fun. And I think it's also a good reminder to leave the dead tree standing because, in city parks, when the tree is dead, they're always cutting them down. And especially when they have a cavity like this, it provides essential shelter for like raccoons and owls and woodpeckers and, other animals. So I think we need to keep that in mind.
I love that you said that about, you don't have to go far
Yeah.
to find amazing wildlife photos. Because every year when we do our wildlife competition, which you won last year, of course we get great images of bears and wolves and charismatic predators, but I'm holding out hope for the day that we get a winner of like a squirrel or a chipmunk.
Yeah.
They're everywhere, and I'm sure somebody can like have a creative vision of how to make a chipmunk look epic.
I totally agree. I sent a chipmunk photo for this year contest. So yeah, it was part of maybe the reason why I won. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
All right, let's go to the next one. Another super special image, Ryan?
Yeah, and this actually goes back to something I was talking about earlier, which is camera trapping and understanding your subject, right? So spirit bears, again, one of the rarest bears on the planet. I think there's a new study that came out in 2023, I believe, that adjusted their numbers to around 90 individuals in the wild. And just background on spirit bears there, it's a black bear. It's a genetically diverse subspecies of black bear that has a recessive allele that gives it its white pigment in the coat. So you need the right combination of alleles to produce a white bear. And they only exist on the central coast of British Columbia. So finding one is incredibly hard, but starting to understand your environment and what your subject is interested in, bears foraging on salmon during the salmon spawn, you start getting yourself better chances. So, we had heard that there were spirit bears on this river system foraging on salmon, and just like walking up and down the river repeatedly, you start understanding what bear kind of dominates what part of the river system. And we had noticed that there was this little like gap in the river, like there were no bears there, and there was tons of kill on the ground. So figured that this perch in front of the salmon pool right in front of us was a really good opportunity to get any species of bear, black or white or even potentially grizz. And it's always like Christmas coming back to a successful camera trap and like getting to look through your cameras like, oh my God, we finally got a spirit bear. So that was a good one.
Absolutely amazing. All right, next one. Some more super cute.
Yeah, so I love that kind of moment. So this is a beautiful moment just between a mother, a vixen, we say, and a kid. I photographed this family and I followed them for quite some times. I think the left photo is definitely my favorite. I just love, the interaction between the two. She had an incredible litter of 10 kids on that year, which is like incredible for red foxes. So there was always obviously a lot of action around the den. The young were just like playing everywhere. She seemed pretty exhausted, but she was always on the watch. Like you can see her, she's always like looking, is there anything threatening my babies, I guess. So yeah, it was just so fun to watch. And this one was trying just to catch her attention, but she was like still on the watch again. So yeah, just some very fun images.
I just love watching foxes. And I understand why they're like one of the most popular subjects for photographers, because they're so funny, especially once the kids start to play and fight and they just don't stop.
Oh yeah. Honestly, you can like spend days looking at them and they're doing some incredible things. And when they're bringing food, they're just playing, throw it in the air. It's just, what's happening here? They're really like, babies playing, literally.
Yeah, like little puppies.
Yeah.
All right.
Huh. Yeah, another bear, another camera trap. This is a story I just closed for the Trebek Initiative, and it's called Stolen Slumber. And going back, I think I mentioned it too, is on Vancouver Island, black bears are exclusively reliant to den in hollowed out old growth cavities. And unfortunately, old growth is still being logged in British Columbia. There's less than 3% of old growth left, and there's less than 1% of productive old growth left, which is living, growing trees. So, as we continue to log old growth, we have no idea how these bears are going to survive, because theoretically they can endure a relatively temperate winter from coastal British Columbia, but if they can't den, they can't reproduce. Reproduction happens during hibernation. So this photo, the story is called Stolen Slumber, and I'd found this, really incredible daybed. Actually, a good friend had found this daybed. And it's just such a special opportunity to have the chance to photograph, your subject on like the perfect example of what stolen slumber is. If this is a previously logged old growth dug fir, and it was a long time coming for trying to get this one shot.
Where can we see this project, Ryan?
I don't know. It's currently National Geographic sitting on it, so I don't know what the outcome of that will be. But ultimately the story needs to be told because it's an opportunity to share the significance of old growth through a different perspective rather than a human perception of old growth, but like a reliant animal perception on old growth. And I think that's one of our issues we have right now when we're discussing old growth is we all have this intrinsic value of what old growth is to us, but we don't necessarily relate why it's so important to the animals that inhabit it. And, some of these like active trees are, 7 to 1,000, 1,200 years old. And once we log them, who knows what this world's going to look like in 1,200 years in terms of getting back to what it once was, or if that's even possible. So, when they're logged, they're gone forever. So sharing this story through an animal perspective is pretty important.
Well, if Nat Geo passes, you know where to find us. Okay, I think the next one, yes, this is another sort of going back to the lengths that you have to go to get the shot. This is the process, and then we're going to show you the photo, right, Maxime?
Yeah, exactly. So this was quite a long journey to achieve that shot. So there is a place, it's not too far from home. It's a private bog that I have access to. And I noticed that it was a pair of kestrel, always seated on the same trees. And I didn't want to disturb them first, but at some point I noticed that there was a tree cavity in one of the tree, and someday I went there again and there was no kestrel. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna look if there is something inside this cavity. And when I was walking, it's literally like you're walking on sinking island, every time you put your feet, so yeah, it's quite hard to work in this type of environment. So when I was about to get there, I saw the kestrel leaving the nest. So I was like, oh my God, they're nesting. And it was a tree cavity at eye level, which is really pretty cool. And we don't get a lot of kestrel in the east. They are crazy skittish. It's impossible to get close to them. So I was like, okay, I need to do this properly. So I waited 30 days because I didn't want to disturb them. It's when it's a nesting bird or animal, you need to be very careful with everything you do. So I waited a month before going back there to set up a little camp that you can see here. I had a ghillie suit, everything, that I could do, but the problem is to get there. There's no forest, it's a bog, it's open space, so they see you coming. So then I needed to, again, wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning to get there before the sunrise. It was just a very long journey to get there. It was also a lot of mosquitoes. And it took me a while to learn, because I spent days and days, and it was just not working. The kestrel wouldn't come, and I knew the baby were born. They had to. So I was just like, what am I going to do? I need to get, what I want. And at some point, I noticed I was always going on cloudy days, because if I was going on a sunny day, then I would have harsh light, which was not what I wanted. I wanted, beautiful, soft light. But when it's cloudy, the dragonfly, that is what they feed mostly on this, they were not active. So this is why I was not getting the shot. So I spent honestly a long time in just learning the behavior. And then I was just like, okay, so if I go on a sunny day, and so at the end of the day, after 2 weeks process, I finally get the shot. I just got one, and I spent a lot of time. I also didn't say I needed to carry the kayak on my head for 15 minutes every time, then go back to the car to carry. I needed also to wear some waders, and it's just you can't breathe in there. It's summer, so it's super, even early in the morning, you're super hot. And honestly, it was hard, but at the end, I got the shot, so.
Let's see it.
Yeah. It's nothing incredible, but you can see the mosquito. I'm not lying. See the amount of mosquito on this. It was incredible, honestly. So yeah, just a lot of work for an image. It's not nothing, it's going to ever win a contest, but for me, it was my first, kestrel shot, eye level nest, so it was a very cool achievement.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, speaking of spending a lot of time in the field, we're going to talk about the project that you're working on right now as the O'Dane Wildlife Conservation Fellow, which is about the sea wolves of coastal BC. So why don't you give us a bit of an overview of the project, and then we'll get into what you've been up to.
Sure, yeah, so in the name, sea wolf, it's a really special subspecies of gray wolf, which has evolved to essentially exclusively forage off the intertidal zone. So it's almost more of a marine mammal than it is a terrestrial mammal, which is really special. So you can find them all over coastal British Columbia on islands, island hopping, swimming, eating clams, mussels, whales, sea lions, anything that washes up on shore. So they're really, in sync and in tune with their environment, and know tides really well. They're just super intelligent, and the story's kind of taking place, or I'm working on it over the next year, and it's just hellishly hard, to be honest. I mean, wolves are elusive anywhere on the planet, but then to get somewhere so remote and then find wolves is even harder. So it's a tough process.
And you put together a little video giving us a bit of an insight into that.
Well, I was checking for wolves this weekend and having to traverse this cut block, which has just been so wet. It's windy, it's wet. My hands are like glued to my legs with water, and unfortunately, really nothing to show for it. I think that's how this story is really gonna pan out. Just wrapping up the day here on the west coast of Vancouver Island. No wolves. I'm waiting for wolves. No luck. This is how it goes. Hopefully, the next time I come back here, I'll have some wolves. And now it's hailing. It's like thick hail. Pelted on the head. It's all worth it when you find a wolf, I guess. But I've not had that luck yet.
Okay, but I understand that you did have some luck this weekend, so let's take a look at the shot that you got.
Yeah. So this is, those numbers I gave out earlier. This is that photo. So 18 days in the field this year so far, several thousand kilometers by boat and truck, 12 ferries for one 10-minute encounter. And you only need a few of them to get a whole story. And less time you spend with them, ultimately, the better. It's more natural for the animals. So it is like I said earlier. It's really the pursuit which I'm drawn to versus the animal, and all that suffering is worth it when you do get something really special like this. 4 or 5 feet away from a wild wolf, just doing wild wolf things, right? So hopefully the whole purpose of the story is to help change public perception of wolves. And there's obviously the photo essay, but it's going to be hopefully accompanied by an educational component, which is going to be integrated into British Columbia public school systems, which teach younger children or targeting younger children to essentially learn to revere and appreciate these wolves like we once did way back before when we were hunter-gatherers, I guess you could say. You have perfect examples like Romulus and Remus, who are heroes and like iconic in folklore, and then all of a sudden we shifted from this hunter-gatherer perspective into like an agricultural domesticated world, and then wolves started becoming the perception of wolves was changed because they were eating livestock and cattle, and then we get stories like Little Red Riding Hood with the big bad wolf and the 3 little piggies when the wolf blew the house down. So it's been like really baked into our subconscious that wolves are really bad, and it's simply not true. So the project of this is to, there might not be like a specific why now, like why is this relevant now, but I think there's a greater purpose of like, really inspiring this change of how wolves are perceived, and then, with a photo essay and then also an educational component, hopefully we can achieve that.
Well, we're so excited to see what you can do this year, and hopefully you have more encounters with wolves. And we'll have to get the final tally of how many boat rides, how many miles driven.
I'm not looking forward to it. Yeah.
And what about you, Maxime? What are you working on next? What's the dream shot that you're trying to capture?
Oh my God, there's a lot of dream shots and dream destinations. So next, I'm going to Europe in 3 weeks. So I'll be guiding in Spain and France, and after that, I'll go to Slovenia. Hopefully, trying to find a Ural owl. It's a very hard word to pronounce for me. So Ural, you know that one? Yeah. So a super nice owl species. I've never seen them before. I have about 2 weeks that I can do on this project. So hopefully, I can make it work. So yeah, we'll see.
And we just today were talking about potentially doing something on marbled murrelets.
Oh yes, this is very exciting. I'm still like thinking about this. I'm like, oh yeah. I hope we can make it happen. We'll do our best.
For sure. Well, expect to see a lot more from Ryan and Maxime in the pages of Cangeo in the next year or two. Okay, last question from me, and then we'll open it up to some questions from the audience. what would you say to someone who's really passionate about photography or just passionate about nature like Maxime was growing up and thinking about pursuing this as a career? Is it doable?
After you.
I mean, it's definitely not the easiest job in the world. I think if the person is doing it for the right reason, I think not for money or anything else, but really for passion for nature, I think this is achievable. My advice would be to be consistent because there's a lot of photographers now, a lot of amateurs photographer, and this is pretty much everyone's dream to live from this. So I think if you're very consistent, with your work and you just, never give up, maybe it's gonna work. It worked for me and Ryan, so why not? Anything to add?
Yeah. I mean, when I went freelance, I really struggled with the lack of structure, right? Like there's no natural progression. You don't get promoted. You don't get a new job. You can't work at a different entity. So that was tough to kind of overcome because it's to a sense like you versus the world, but then you start to establish relationships and like companionships with other people in similar scenarios, and then when someone finds a way, usually it's clever enough where other people can then follow suit. But like the most important advice I was ever given was to just seriously have numerous revenue streams. So to be honest, I can't make a career out of exclusive full-time photography. Which is why I do a ton of video as well, and like public speaking, all these fine art sales. There's so many different opportunities to stay involved in some capacity, and ultimately it keeps things exciting because you're not doing one thing over and over. Like as much as I love wolves, it's just not like you don't want to do that forever. So having the opportunity to work with so many different cool things, whether that's getting stung by bees in the Philippines or whatever it might be, it's very fulfilling, even if it's not necessarily financially fulfilling. So if you love it enough, you'll figure it out.
Great. Well, now we can take some questions from the audience.
I'm on Facebook, and I follow some animal rescues. And what I've noticed recently is that my wife and I would look at it, and it sort of looks like there's AI involved. Is that touching your soul somewhere? Like a picture of the picture. I mean, there was one where it's interesting why someone actually had a camera during that happening. So I'm looking at shadows, to try to figure out if is it AI or is it not AI? Is it something that you've been thinking about lately? Or?
Yeah, I mean, even having to ask that question is scary, right? Because then it's no longer photojournalism. And I'd like to believe, real stories will kind of rise to the top, but I guess there is no clear answer. There's so much uncertainty with AI. But yeah, of course, it's disturbing in the sense of seeing stuff that becomes increasingly more challenging to dignify. Of like, is this AI? Is this real? And as a professional photographer, having to ask that question myself, looking at stuff is shitty, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I think that's just the new reality, and as much as you can complain and like for me whine about it, it doesn't stop me from doing the work I feel is important. So I just kind of overlook it, and to be honest, I'm using AI myself to help storyboard ideas, or if like I have a shot that I really want to envision, I can like type into ChatGPT and say like, hey, can you like if I want a wolf on a stump or a bear on a stump, like show me a frame, and it can just like create something, and then like I can use that as reference when I go out in real life and create something. Yeah, so it's really nice to like speak with a buddy to like storyboard, and ChatGPT can say, no, you're an idiot, don't do that. So it helps. Yeah. I don't know.
I'm curious, how in relation to this wolf, were you standing, you're blind, where were you?
Standing on the shore. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, no blind.
No blind.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You were telling us earlier that they're quite like they have no predators essentially, so they're like just kind of open and curious and skittish. And...
Yeah. Naturally, like wolves are insanely intelligent, right? Super intelligent, very inquisitive, smart, social creatures. And for the most part, like where I'm working on remote west coast of Vancouver Island or the Central Coast, they don't encounter people because it's just really hard to get there. So if they're not encountering people, that means inevitably they're being hunted less, and you see this as abnormality in their landscape. Like, what is it? And they don't have many predators to essentially like create that fight or flight process in their mind of like, why shouldn't I go approach this individual? And it's tough because, of course I'm thinking, as I'm photographing wolves like this, like, every encounter theoretically makes a wolf more habituated with people. And if it's not me out there, and if it's a hunter, and this wolf has had this interaction with me in the past, it might think like, hey, maybe I can go approach this person, and then that they get shot. So it sucks when you think about things like that, but I think as long as I can justify that the projected outcome of a project overweighs the potential cons in the short term, I think it's worth it, but that's something I think about all the time. So yeah, close and in person.
When you had the pictures of the varmint on the west coast, where on the island?
Yeah, so they're kind of scattered across the whole island, and one of the reasons that they are critically endangered is due to forest fragmentation. So marmots traditionally used to travel amongst different mountain ranges. So Strathcona is one of the best spots on Vancouver Island. Mount Washington, which is actually coincidentally a ski hill as well, Mount Arrowsmith. But all of these mountains that historically used to be connected with forests now is cut, and when the marmots try to relocate to different colonies as they naturally spread and find new mates, it's easier hunting for animals as they're not covered anymore by forest. So yeah.
I thought I saw another question over there. Yeah.
I have a question. If you're looking to target specific species to photograph, if you have like a methodology or a process for targeting specific habitats, like other specific technologies or like aerial imagery that you use to essentially like know where to locate the species that you want to hunt.
If I well understand the question, I hope I do. So for me, what I do usually when I want to photograph a very specific species, I'll go on the internet mostly. I would also sometimes use chat to, ask questions now, and so it's helping obviously to find where you can locate the species, and then you need to get out there and hopefully you need to see it for yourself, right? But it's always a long process, and so again, I know we said it multiple times, but I feel the more you go, if you know you're in the right place, the right habitat, it's probably going to happen, but you just need to spend a lot of time there, I guess.
At 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, or it's sometimes even at 3, or it's super early anyway, that's for sure, yeah.
A lot of it comes down to relationships too, right? Like knowing people who spend a lot of time in those places and can say, oh, hey, like I've seen a fox family hanging out in this area, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's nothing better than a local. For example, I just came back from Belize, and it was some locals who took me to photograph an owl. For example, I was, if I was going there by myself, the odds of finding one in 5 days, honestly, this just wouldn't have happened. So when you have like locals who can help you, it's definitely, it's helping us for sure.
Anything to add, Ryan?
No.
Canadian Geographic look and commission projects, or do the photographers bring their projects to you?
I guess I can answer that question. It happens both ways. So we will sometimes, as an editorial team, think of a story that we like to tell, and then we'll think about photographers in our network who might be in a position to go and do a shoot for us. But a lot of the time, photographers do come to us and say, hey, I've got this portfolio or body of work. I've been spending a lot of time with this species or in this place. Would you be interested in publishing my work? And so then we would discuss kind of the inverse of that, a writer who we could assign to create some words to accompany those photos. But I think the best way of doing it is when we kind of work in harmony, where like we have a great pitch from a writer, we have a photographer who maybe we already know has been working in an area, and then when we can bring those two things together, it's just magic. So a good example is a story in our issue that just came out, the March-April issue, about Doll sheep. We have a writer based in the Yukon who is so fantastic and has great relationships with the First Nations around Kluane, and so wrote a beautiful story about Dall sheep. And a photographer who won our competition 2 years ago has spent a ton of time with the sheep and had gorgeous images. And so bringing those two together was just, it was magical. It's a beautiful story. So.
And that's, you're talking about networking.
Exactly, yeah. We have a huge network of contributors all across Canada. And so the fun part of our jobs as editors is just thinking about like, okay, who is the best person to tell the story, write the words, create the images, and how do we bring it all together and just make something that's really gonna inspire our readers and educate them. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, could you describe the interaction you had with that bird? How the scene unfolded from the moment you saw him?
Yeah. It's very brief. Just conveniently on the shore, kind of sitting and waiting, and sure enough, one I believe from the imagery, she was a female who came up, and there was a pack of 3. She was definitely the most inquisitive and showed some sign of interest. The other 2 didn't even acknowledge me and just kept walking through. So came up, took a good look, carried on, and that was all you really need, right? So pretty special. Yeah.
Were you shaking?
No, it's fortunately I've spent a bunch of time with wolves, and some of the best wildlife encounters in my life are around wolves. Yeah. Oh, after the fact, sure. But during it, unfortunately, I think that's a reality for a lot of work. At least for me, is like you don't really get to enjoy the moment because you're working, so you don't really appreciate anything until after the fact. So it's a weird mindset to be in during the moment, because you're like, wow, I've spent so much time to get into this opportunity. I really need to focus to make sure I can make the most out of it, for my benefit and also for the animals' benefit, right? So it's exciting after the fact, and a relief to get it, only days before coming to Ottawa. So I have something to show for the project so far. Yeah.
Yes, I hope the O'Dane Foundation is watching the live stream right now, because we just got the inside scoop on the Seawolves project.
Yeah.
Any other questions? We can take a couple more. Yes.
Paul Newton in Nova Scotia takes incredible photographs, micro. Like I've seen pictures on his website of spiders and the whole world of spiders. It's just a whole new world. Do you do a lot of micro stuff like that?
I'll let you answer.
Yeah.
I'm not a macro photographer. I'll use it opportunistically to tell a story better. Something that I'm actually probably going to shoot, which is super weird for the wolf story, is I'm trying to integrate a Western science on ongoing research that what makes these wolves so unique. And one of the best ways to study the wolves is actually through their scat, because they are so elusive. So if you find their scat, you can learn so much about them. So I'm planning on putting a camera lens into some wolf poop in the near future, and just having the opportunity to it'd be weird and abstract, but also it is important, and it helps. That image might help open a conversation to why that research is important. So as great as this image is, something I'm also thinking of after I capture this is I don't need any more tight shots, because if a photo essay is 8 to 12 images. You need the one, and then you need to start building around those images to help share your larger story more effectively. So in that component, the Western science, scat is such an integral part of the research that they do, and photographing scientists in the field collecting scat, photographing scat being analyzed in a lab is really important. So that's my long-winded answer to taking photos of poop with macro.
What kind of equipment do you use?
Yeah, there you go.
That's an easy one for me. So I have actually Canon and Nikon. I have both. I have a 600 millimeters f4. So just like a big zoom. I do a lot of birds. People who know me, I love a good bird. So yeah, just to be, closer to them, obviously without disturbing them. I always carry the 1.4 teleconverter too. So if I'm not close enough, then I will just put on this 1.4, and then I'm at 840 millimeters, which is, quite a long range. I also carry with me a wide angle, in case the opportunity presents itself that I'm very close to the subject. Doesn't happen very often. It's more like a dream thing, but a couple times in life, I guess this could happen. And also a mid-range zoom, like something like a 100 to 400 millimeters, in case I have like a big mammal, it's a moose or something like that, and I cannot back up. So yeah, so this is the 3 lens that I usually have with me.
How many bodies?
I just have one. That's reasonable, isn't it? So I have actually a backup one that I'm bringing with me when I'm traveling, but I just have one body, which is the R5 for Canon and the Z8 for Nikon.
Just to add on to that with perspective photographers, I just took this photo last weekend with a camera that's 9 years old. So it's like someone's always going to take a better photo than you with a worse camera and worse equipment. So stop thinking about it like that, because it's silly. Like at the end of the day, when you start treating them like tools rather than prized possessions, then you start getting more out of them. So I just use the camera till it stops working or until I can't get good enough imagery. And like the second we kind of converted from DSLR to mirrorless, like everything is just so impressive. Like, I don't need to shoot 30 frames a second. I don't need 200 megabyte raw files because I'm not printing billboard posters with this, right? And if you want, you can use AI now to upscale images. So like, again, just like trying to make the most of new tech, and it's like photography is an expensive career. So if you can get away with using older cameras secondhand, go for it. And that's what I do.
We published images that come from an iPhone in the magazine,
Really?
and they're great, and you'd never know that they weren't taken with, a top-line camera.
Yeah. With that said, I'd love to use the 600 f4. Like, it's nice using nice, expensive proprietary gear, but you don't need it necessarily to get into it.
Okay, one more?
Have either of you ever gone to Capitol, I may not be saying it correctly, but east of Quebec City to do the snow geese migration again in the fall with the background of the Canadian shield in color?
Snow geese and...
Oh, okay, the snowy. I thought I heard it. I thought I heard a snowy. I was like, oh, snowy owls, that's fall. I never heard of that. So yeah, I went there actually a couple of times. So there are some places where they go, and there's like hundreds of thousands of them. This is very impressive. And when the predators come, for example, the bald eagles, it will just all fly at the same time. So it's very impressive. I went there a couple of times to shoot that. It's just amazing. And I don't know if you're getting that in Ontario. I'm pretty sure you do. You probably have some place where they stop when they're migrating. So it's just like one of the greatest show I think we can have here in Eastern Canada.
Right, so is that migration of the snow geese still going on now? Because I don't mean at this moment, but annually?
Yeah.
Does it still go through there?
Yeah, every spring and every fall, they will migrate, and there's a lot of them. I know their population is just increasing a lot, so now you see a lot of them. I've seen some flying, over my head when I was driving here. I was like, oh, there's already started migrating. It's March, it's early. So yeah, there's a lot of them, that's for sure.
The reason I was asking is because we get a lot of snow geese coming, if you know where to go in the Ottawa area now. And years ago when I started bird watching, it just didn't happen. And now it's easy to find them here in the fall.
Yeah, I think there's more and more of them. Like I think now they started hunting them because there's actually too many of them, especially in the Arctic. I think they're just like eating everything, which is not the best. So yeah, there's a lot of them, that's for sure.
I've seen them on the fields, like around Castleman. There's usually a lot in the fall. They like to hang out on the farm fields. Yeah. There was a question back there.
Have you ever maybe seen an animal in distress or felt the need to intervene? I know you're not supposed to, but I find it difficult not to.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been on boats when we see sea lions tangled up with stuff, and unfortunately I've come across whale carcasses and crab nets. So it happens, and when I have the opportunity to share with the correct folks who can actually do something about it, then I will. I haven't been in a scenario where I've had to do something myself, but there's a fantastic series BBC released a few years ago called Dynasties, or Dynasties if you're David Attenborough. And yeah, there's an Emperor Penguin episode, and it's one of the most powerful parts like of any natural history series I've watched. But if you're nodding your head, maybe you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, and just for the rest of the room, they came across these penguins that got stuck in this like big crevasse, and they couldn't get out. So they're really emotional because you're not meant to manipulate nature in any capacity when you're being a fly on the wall. But they dug a path out for them, and felt really rewarded, and it was worth it. And I think the behind the scenes was the best part of the whole film. And I thought the film was excellent. So yeah, I think when the opportunity arises, it's worthwhile.
I think the gentleman at the back, yeah.
So there's this famous picture of Jimmy Carter being attacked by a rabbit with his fishing in his boat. So I was wondering, when Max was in his kayak and saw that moose, like, I guess it's really a question for both of you. Other than the bees, how often do your subjects turn on you?
In my case, I would say never happen. Honestly, when you keep a distance from the animal, and for example, a moose, if he's about to charge you, they will just like lower their ears. You will know when you're disturbing them, and obviously you don't want to get there. So you just need to, again, I'm saying it like over and over, but when you know about the subject you're photographing, you will know if you're disturbing it, and you know if he's gonna like come for you. So for me, maybe one thing that happened once, I just like surprised a grizzly bear in the Rockies. Everything ended up fine, but I was just like, yeah, both of us were just like, oh my god. So yeah, it was quite something. But honestly, when I'm seeing the animal, I will just try, to stay away and just leave them be.
What about you, Ryan? Ever been attacked by a subject?
The bees?
Yeah, I was about to say never, but I guess the bees. Yeah, but I'd say like that is something that Maxime just mentioned is like, if you understand your subject and have purpose in your photography, then you never want to get in a scenario where an animal is going to turn on you, right? And I think for a lot of time that what separates amateurs to professionals in the sense of like just there to get the shot or there to respect the animal. So there is like that fine line, and of course, wildlife is wild. So people can get complacent. You see grizzly bear viewing tours all the time, where people are pretty much touching bears, and it's not beneficial for anyone. And we really don't need more grizzly bear photos on the planet. Like, oh my goodness, they're eating salmon. I've seen it so many times. But it's not to like gatekeep by any capacity, but just to like have people start, thinking more from the animal's perspective rather than from their own pursuit. And the more you start doing that, the less opportunity you have for an animal to turn on you theoretically. So it's a big thing that's constantly thought about.
Great.
When you're doing your planning for your photography, might be an exception, but in the more remote areas, are you entirely by yourself? You go out in the tent just with your equipment and entirely by yourself to wait it out for 18 days or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, the 18 days are over a bunch of smaller trips, but it depends. Like, of course, it's safer to be out with other people, but other people have real jobs, so it's hard to get someone to go out to the Northwest Coast with you on a Tuesday. So yeah, a lot of the time you're solo, or at least I'm solo, and extra, I guess, conscious. Like you could see in the video, I have a Garmin on me, which if I run into trouble, even the drive back the day before my flight out, it was raining on the coast, and the second one I'm driving back through the logging roads, there's one pass at 600 meters, and now there's 6 inches of snow. Like, ooh, got to be smart about this, because it's not, it's never worth it to injure yourself or risk being injured. But yeah, a lot of the time, for me, it's solo at least.
Yeah, I also think it depends of what you're shooting and where. I'm guiding photo tours, so I wish I was always solo though, but no, I'm kidding. Sorry for my clients. I love them. They're the best. No, but it depends. Honestly, it's like to have company, and sometimes when you're with someone, it's actually easier. So yeah, I'm often with other people, depending on where I go. So sometimes you can be like, I don't know, in the jungle in Costa Rica, and you will stay in a super nice lodge, and some other times you will have to camping, to go to the campsite somewhere. So it really depends of what you're after. So I guess every trip and every species are a lot different.
Okay, we'll do one more.
Maybe more of an unserious question, but when there's so much rush and adrenaline, when you're probably going on your way to getting these shots, are there any superstitions or good luck charms or celebrations that you have memorable, like traditions, that you get that shot that you've been waiting for so long?
I mean, it's the best feeling ever, especially when you work a lot on an image. For example, I can believe like after 18 days, like finally getting the wolf, it must be incredible. I don't recall like honestly spending that much time on this, like on a specific project. I have, very high esteem for Ryan to do this. I don't think I can last that long. So obviously when you get the shot, it's just like the best feeling ever. And when you just live this moment, and as he said, so you need to like stay calm, you know, when it's happening, because you're just like so excited. Or actually, I am excited, but I'm just like, you need to calm down. Because if you want to get, you know, the best out of it, you need to like, okay, you need to chill, right? Let's say it. So yeah, it's just the best feeling.
I have a rule that actually my mentor Paul gave to me, and it was like more of a punishment, but it's like no chimping in the field. And what chimping is like looking at the back of the camera like a little chimpanzee. You're distracted every time you take a photo, because you know you have short encounters like this. You don't want to spend half the time looking at your photos to make sure they're okay. You kind of have to trust yourself that you know they're going to turn out all right, or at least one of them is going to turn out right. So you can spend that time as focused as you possibly can, rather than chimping and spending half the time wasted looking at the back of the camera.
All right, well, I'll ask you to join me in a round of applause for Max and Ryan. That was so fantastic. We're going to stick around for another half hour or so by all means, continue mingling. Feel free to, you know, ask Ryan and Max more questions individually. Check out the beautiful prints that we had made of some of their images that are around this floor and the floor below us. And if you would like to take one home, we would consider accepting a donation to the Society if you would like maybe a signed poster from Ryan or Max.
Why not?
And definitely check out the magazines that we have as well. The issues that we put out downstairs have work by Ryan and Maxime in them, so not to be missed. You can read about the marmots, you can see the photos that won Maxime, the Canadian Wildlife Photography of the Year competition. And I'll just wrap up by saying another thank you to the O'Dane Foundation. I hope they're watching on the live stream, but if not, we'll definitely relay that to them, that we're just so appreciative of their support of Canadian Geographic and these incredible storytellers. And I'm just so excited for the work that we're going to publish in the coming months. So thank you so much for coming, and stick around and we'll meet with some more. Thank you.